Hi, fellow shapes enthusiasts. I am Binz, and I welcome you to part 10 in the BUTTMAM series. We are about halfway our journey, and I definitely hope you're still having fun, because if you aren't, well, then I'm afraid we're kind of in the lion's den, and it's kind of hard to just exit. So if you're a bit uncomfortable, please just try to suck it up, remain quiet, and please try to not get mauled and eaten, because, a casualty would kind of negatively affect my reputation as a tour guide, so staying alive would kindly be appreciated. If you have been with us from the beginning, you will know that BUTTMAM, which is the birth name of my TMAM, will try to construct the final shape out of 4 pieces, plus an optional 5th layer. The pieces may come in various sizes and forms, but they do adhere to certain criteria. Today, I'd like to hone in on a specific issue that arises as a consequence of that entire 5 pieces thing. An issue you don't have in a regular MAM, and that issue is stacking order. While I'm sure there are variants in existence, usually MAMs will be built on a kind of divide by 2 principle. You start off with 16 quadrants, you pair them up, and you stack those in pairs in order to obtain 8 half layers. And then you're going to stack those in pairs so you get to 4 full layers. You stack those in pairs again to get 2 double layer pieces. And finally, you stack the 2 of those together again one final time to give you the required shape. It's a very parallel and straightforward process. Furthermore, for the first 2 steps in that stacking process, the order in which you stack isn't relevant at all, as you aren't really stacking yet, but merging quadrants onto the same layer. It really does not matter which quadrants you combine first and which half layers you combine after that. And even for the last 3 stacking steps, while relevant, it's still pretty transparent. You just have to make sure that you don't accidentally stack the upper layers of the shape below the lower ones. But in practice, you're likely to even do that intuitively, as the layout of your machine tends to be so that the top layer quadrants are going to be coming from one end of the machine and the bottom layers from the other side, and they gradually meet in the middle as they move through each stacker. Alright? But for this approach with the pieces, the one that I'm using in this TMAM, that process isn't as straightforward, and that is what I'd like to talk to you about today. So, let's have a look at the wiring layer. Isn't it a beauty? Well, we've got the cyclers over here at the top, and then we have the cross filters over here and over here, and they are responsible. Their purpose is to create a set of 4 candidate pieces that firstly will be sent into the lane sorter module. Now, while I do have a separate video in store for the lane sorter, for now, you should just know that even though the candidate pieces may vary in size and form, there is a kind of hierarchy among those pieces. And if you're working with a shape that doesn't have any floating quadrants, then that hierarchy is very easy to understand. The first piece will have all of the quadrants of the first layer of the final shape. The second piece will have all of the quadrants of the second layer, etc. But for shapes that do have floating quadrants, it becomes slightly more complicated than that. Nonetheless, regardless of which shapes you put in, the candidate pieces can always be numbered. So we will be able to identify one of the pieces as being the first piece, another one as being the second piece, etc. So that is what the lane sorter is for, and it sends its output to the validator. Okay? And the validator that will be our main focus of today. Because even if you have found the correct pieces, and even if you have given them the correct number, there are still several possibilities of stacking the pieces together. So there are still ways to botch it up. Depending on the shape, sometimes more than one or even all of the different stacking methods may lead to the correct result, but in others, there is only one specific order of stacking operations that will lead to the desired output, which is the final shape. And obviously, in such a case, the wiring needs to be able to figure out which one that is so that it can instruct the physical assembly units how to stack the pieces, right? And in turn, the physical assembly units also require mechanisms that can cater to that instruction. In other words, they need to understand the instruction and be able to adapt, because only that way the 4 pieces can be stacked correctly and the final shape can be obtained. So let's zoom here. Let's go here. I have discerned 3 different stacking operations, 3 different stacking methods that a shape may need to be stacked in, even if we know the correct pieces and we know the correct order. Okay? The first one of those methods is what I call a full house stack of the first type. And the reason I call it a full house stack is because you see this little belt setup right here. It kind of reflects how stacking should happen. So you are going to first stack 3 of the pieces together, and then simultaneously, parallelly, you are going to stack 2 of those pieces together. And then this one with the 3 pieces, with the 3-piece stack, and the other one with the 2-piece stack, they are going to be stacked together. All right? So you have 3 on one hand and 2 pieces on the other, and that's why I call it a full house stack. An example of a shape would be this one. Okay? So the way this machine, my machine, would stack that shape is as follows. This is piece number 1. And that gets stacked with piece number 2. And the result of that will be this. Okay? That will be stacked below piece number 3. This would be piece number 3. And the result of that will be this. Okay? And now, simultaneously, parallel to that, you get piece 5, which is stacked on top of piece 4. And the combination of that will be this. And now this piece and that piece, they will be stacked to get the final result. You know, as you probably know by now, the combination of these two gives us would give us a shape with 5 layers, and that is not possible within this game, and therefore the gray circle, which is the top layer of this one, is stacked out and removed from the shape, and the final result is this. So that is the first stacking scenario. The second stacking scenario, that's a tongue twister right there, is the full house stack of type 2. And it essentially has the same mechanism, except that the part where you stack 3 pieces together and the part where you stack 2 pieces together, that is flipped, right? So here you have pieces 1, 2, and 3 stacked together, and then separately you have pieces 4 and 5 stacked together. Well, here you will get pieces 3, 4, and 5 stacked together, and pieces 1 and 2 stacked together separately, and then the combination of that will be stacked one final time. So you also get a full house stack, so to speak, so a part with 3 pieces and a part with 2 pieces, but the separation between them is different, is located in a different position. An example of such a piece would be this one, for example. The rocket shape corresponds to this method, and that means that the rocket shape would be stacked as follows. You have the fifth layer, the fifth piece. This is the fourth piece. They get stacked together, so you get this. That is stacked on top of the third piece, which is this, the result of which will look like this. And then simultaneously, we will stack the first piece below the second piece, the result of which will be this. And then those two results, those two outputs, they will be stacked a final time. And again, the fifth layer is stacked out of the shape so that in the final result, the top layer will be the fourth piece, as a matter of fact. Okay? That is the second stacking type. And the third stacking type is what I call a linear stack. And in the linear or serial stack, we are simply going to take the fifth piece, stack it on top of the fourth, stack the result of that on top of the third, that on top of the second, that on top of the first. So this is like a linear staircase, kind of. An example of such a shape would be this shape, which is actually, in my experience, one of the hardest shapes to do in this game. So the way that shape would be done is you get the fifth piece, you stack it on top of the fourth piece, which in this case would be this shape. The result of that will be this. We stack that on top of the third piece, which is this. The outcome will be this. We stack that on top of the second piece, which is this. The result looks like this. And we stack that one final time on top of the first piece. And the outcome will be this. Okay? Now, just for fun, let's see how this plays out in practice. Okay, we're going to run these machines. I'm going to run these shapes, and you will see that we get this full house stack with pieces 1, 2, and 3 being stacked first, and pieces 4 and 5 being stacked separately, and then those combinations, the sum of that, they will meet in the middle and get the final result. Okay, so let's do that. Let the machine search for a bit. Okay, and I have also reflected this approach in my display setup. Okay, so you have pieces 1 and 2, that they are stacked first, and then the result of that is stacked together with piece 3. And then simultaneously, you get pieces 4 and 5. They get stacked, and then these two are stacked together to obtain the final result. Okay, let's wait for this shape to be produced. One, 3, they are all ready now. All pieces are ready. And now they get stacked as predicted. You can also have a look at these displays, which show the results. There we go. And that is our final shape. Okay, let's have a look at the second type, the rocket shape. Very similar, but as mentioned, the separation between the 3 pieces and the 2 pieces is different for the rocket shape. So we're going to see it play out. The displays again reflect how we're going to stack. We're going to stack pieces 1 and 2 together to obtain this result. And then we're going to stack layer 5 on top of 4, the result of that on top of 3. And then these 2 pieces, they get stacked one final time to obtain that result. So again, let's look at our machine. And again, you can have a look at these 4 displays. And there we go. The rocket logo is being output to the hub. We should actually see this this number increase right here. There we go. And eventually this will run up to a full belt, okay? And now the final one, the linear stack or the serial stack. Let's have a look at that one. This will probably take the machine the longest because it is one of the hardest shapes to analyze in my experience. So it will take the machine some time to get this, you know, to identify which pieces it needs. There we go. Okay, I sped up the video a little bit there. But anyway, you can see now what the stacking process is for this one. So we get 5 on top of 4, the result of that on top of 3, the result of that on top of 2, and the result of that on top of 1. And that's how we get the final shape. So let's look at the machine again. Belts go brrrr. And there we have it. Shapes are being produced, and again, it will take this machine a hot second to run up to a full belt. Okay, now we're going to get to the interesting stuff, because how does that work? I'm going to go back to the validator, and now we're going to have a close-up look at how the validator works. So, the validator, it receives its 5 pieces from the left in this case. Okay, the validator itself starts right here. Okay, try to ignore the rest, because those are just wiring modules that are not directly related to the validator. Okay, so what will happen? These shapes, as you know, as the module is trying to assemble, you know what we're going to do? We're going to look at this live. Okay, so I'm going to input a shape, and we're going to immediately flip to the validator, and then you will be able to see that the input that the validator receives is constantly going to switch. And the reason why it is constantly going to switch is because the module obviously is constantly trying different candidates, right? So in each time the validator receives a set of candidates, it is going to try and stack those pieces together according to the 3 different stacking methods that we just saw. And if one of them succeeds in obtaining the final shape, then it will stop the flow. It will cut the input. And that is a piece of information that loops back on what I talked about in video 6, I believe, about signal sustaining, right? So here is where it all comes together. I'm going to press this button, which is going to send the shape into the analyzer module, and I'm going to immediately switch to the validator, and we will be able to see how the input of the validator is constantly flipping, how it's constantly trying new pieces. Okay, so every few seconds, or every few frames, excuse me, these are the pieces that the machine is going to try. Okay, and you see this constantly switching. That is what it's trying. That is what the other modules are doing. the modules we haven't looked yet in detail. And as long as that's the case, as long as we haven't found the correct shape, this will just keep on flipping until it finds the correct shape, right? So these pieces are fed into a wiring module that is very simply just going to mimic the stacking virtually. Okay, so in this case, the first piece with the second piece on one side, and then the third, the fourth, and the fifth on the other side, they are stacked, and then they meet in the middle, and then they get the final output. That is linked to a comparing unit, and we have the final shape right here. Right, so that is the full house stack type 1. And it appears that meanwhile it has found the correct output. Okay, so let's see, try to not get confused. So this is the full house stack type 1. This is the full house stack type 2. There we go. So pieces 1 and 2 together. With piece 3, so pieces 3, 2, and 1 together on one side, pieces 4 and 5 on the other side. They meet in the middle in this module, and they get compared to the final result. And the final one is the linear stack, or the serial stack, where we just have 5 and 4 and 5 stacked on top of 3, stacked on top of 2, stacked on top of 1. And in this case, that is the one that will provide the correct output. So we just compare this unit with that one, this shape with that one. The comparing unit is going to output a 1. And that is going to do various things. As soon as we get a 1, a signal will be exported to the right. In this case, a star signal. And I would like to take you back to video 3, where I spoke about signal encoding, right? I hope you remember that video, and if you don't, please go watch it, because that is exactly what I did here. Each of these stacking shapes, right? These stacking methods, full house type 1, full house type 2, and serial stack, I assigned a shape code to that. Full house type 1 gets a circle value, a gray circle. Full house type 2 gets a square, and serial gets a star. Okay? And that is exactly what we see in the validator as well. So if we get a serial stack, which is the case here, then I will encode a star signal on this wire, and this star signal will also run to the assembly units alongside the actual pieces, and this will tell the assembly unit how it will need to stack the pieces together. Okay? At the same time, and let's see for a second how that works exactly. Yes, so on this line, we are going to get either a circle, which means a full house stack of the first type, or a square, in which case we get a full house stack of the second type, or a star, which means a linear or serial stack. But either way, at the latest here, we will get a signal on the wire. That signal is combined. Now I need to see that I am explaining the correct wires here, because we have a few things coming together. Let's see, what do we have? Yes, this one. So if we get a signal here, then that means that we have found a correct stacking method, right? That's what that means. And if we have any shape or any stacking method, then in that second, I want the line to the validator to be cut, because the machine might still be trying candidates in the meantime, and with the delay of the ticks that we also talked about in video number 7, right? The machine might still be outputting and cycling various sets of candidates, but as soon as we find a candidate set that works, I want the input to be cut immediately, and that is what this signal is also going to do. So I'm outputting this signal here. I have a kind of delay module right here, and what this delay module does is it's going to sum up, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ticks, and it's going to compare that. And what this module does in practice, actually it's a bit overly complicated because this works just as well. What I want this module to do is the following. The bottom line is going to be fed into the comparing unit immediately, but the top line is only going to be fed into the comparing unit after 10 ticks. And this is how you can effectively create an intentional delay module, right? So if I cut this line, and you're going to have to look very quickly, okay? If I cut this line, this is going to take 10 ticks to reach the comparing unit. And what that means in practice is that if I reconnect the line, maybe it's too fast to see, we'll see. If I reconnect the line, there we go. I don't know if you saw it. I saw it. It took this star shape 10 ticks to reach this. And during those 10 ticks, this output was not given. Only after 10 ticks it was, because only after 10 ticks, this comparing unit output, it's 1, and let the signal pass. And what that means in practice, right? What does this mean in practice? In practice, that means that I want this star signal to be constant for at least a duration of 10 ticks. And the reason I did that is because I noticed in practice sometimes during the rotation of these, of these things. Let's see if I cut the line. Do my machines start running again? No, it appears they don't. I don't immediately know why that is, to be quite frank, but anyway, I have noticed that depending on the shape, right, during the cycling of these candidates, right, it may sometimes happen that we, for a tiny fraction of a second, we actually get a correct combination, right? Even though the rest of the machine is not actually outputting those specific candidates. You know, I don't know if you're following, but the machine might be in the process of switching candidates, right? And it may happen that during that switch, we accidentally get the correct combination, right? But that combination is not constant enough. So that might mean that by the time this signal is cut, these candidates have already changed, right? And I definitely do not want that. So I want these signals to remain constant. And that is only if they are constant for a minimum period of time that I have set with another intentional delay module of ticks. Only if that's the case, this signal may be cut. And I do that simply with a NOT gate, and the NOT gate will cut these lines. And as we explained with the signal sustain mechanic, these candidates are then locked in place, and they will feed the module constantly, even though their input is cut right here, and the machine might still be trying some stuff, but it won't be of any concern anymore. Okay, that is how that works. Now, for the fifth layer, I made it real easy for myself. I decided to simply use a fifth layer if the shape has 4 layers. Simple, period. If the shape has 4 layers, then slap on a 5th. And this means that in practice, there may be many shapes that receive a 5th layer, even though technically they don't need it. However, in terms of wiring setup, this was really easy to do, because slapping on a 5th layer, if the shape has 4 layers in and of itself, that will never create any problems. And it is a lot easier to do that than to have to figure out when exactly a 5th layer is required and when it isn't. So I made it really easy for myself. If the shape has 4 layers, then slap on a 5th layer, and otherwise not. And you can see I did that very simply by unstacking the shape. And if after 2 unstacks you still get a top layer to unstack, well then you can slap on the 5th layer and be done with it. Okay, that is how that works. So on the other side, our signal gets encoded. Okay, and that signal is now the 6th wire that I am going to output. Here we have our 5th piece, which is our 5th layer, the 4th piece, the 3rd piece, the 2nd piece, the 1st piece, and the encoded stacking signal, which is our star. So let's follow that along. Okay, they go around the bend. Some of them split off, right? So that's, let's see, piece 4, piece 5, piece 3 goes to the left, 2 and 1 go to the left as well. So they could go into assembly piece 3, assembly piece 1, piece 2, piece 1, assembly piece 4. Okay, and this is still our encoded stacking signal. And now if we follow this line along, we are going to traverse some modules that I don't initially want to have a look at, because this entire thingamajig is just a gimmick, basically, to get the displays operating the way I want it to, right? So let's not look at all of the wiring pollution here, and let's just follow this line along, okay? It moves here. And here, actually, I have another validator module, right? It was simply because these 2 validator modules are so far apart physically, I found it easier to simply recreate the validator module right here. So again, it is going to take those pieces, but now it also has this symbol, right? So this is the encoded symbol, and it's going to say, well, if this symbol is a star, then this is the way we are going to stack our pieces, right? And we are going to put the pieces on different lines. And these lines will be connected to the filter. So the difference with the previous validator is that the previous validator outputted or put out, I don't know what the correct form is actually, it put out the 5 raw base pieces. And this validator module, it is going to output partially stacked symbols, right? Partially stacked shapes, as you can see right here. And the shapes it is going to put out, well, that will depend on the shape code that we got from our first validator, right? So what happens now? These are output, these shapes are output, and they are connected through with wires. And those wires, they are connected to those filters, right? So, and that is the way that these filters are able to discern which shapes are allowed to pass and which aren't. So this filter on the right if we are dealing with a linear stack, this filter on the right should allow the combination of pieces 4 and 5. Okay? I am speaking slowly because I am also trying to make really sure that I'm not misspeaking or giving off wrong information, right? So this filter anyway, it needs to allow the stacked version of pieces 4 and 5. This filter, the combination of 3, 4, and 5. This filter, the combination of 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this one, the combination of all of the pieces, which gives us the final shape. Now another interesting thing happens, because actually our stacking modules have 3 exits. The first exit is right here, the second exit is right here, and the third exit is right here. And in this case, since the final shape is output in the first of the 4 stacking modules, we're going to take this exit. So what is this going to do? Well, you remember the star shape, right? It is connected here as well. If we get the star shape, if we are dealing with a linear stack, then that means that this should be outputting a 1, which is what it does. And this will be our output. In all other cases, this filter will take the secondary output, and that output is linked to the second module. And this module will be needed in case of dealing with a full house stack. Why? Because in case of a full house stack, we are always going to need to combine piece 1 and 2. Okay, that is what's going to happen. So this encoded signal, it has a lot of ramifications, actually, right? So you see that in this case, this comparing unit is connected to the star. But in other cases, like for example this one, it is connected to the square. Okay, so what I would like to do now, perhaps, is I'm going to take a square shape. Let's see, where was it? The rocket shape was a square, wasn't it? Yes, exactly. That's the full house stack part 2, so let's put that in. Sorry, professional at work. Let's try again. There we go. Let's put that in. And then we're going to have a look at which wire is it? Oh, did I actually make a mistake in my entire explanation? Well, apparently I did. I seem to have switched up the circle and the square for my explanation, but it doesn't really matter because the machine actually works. Okay, so the rocket shape is a circle shape and not a square shape. Anyway, you see that this line, it runs down. And here I have another set of filters, which is also connected to that signal. Okay? So, if we are dealing with a circle, then this filter should be set to 0, and this filter should also be set to... No, this filter should be set to 1, apparently. And what that means is that pieces 1 and 2, they are going to meet. They are going to be stacked, and the output of that is fed into the second module, okay? So in this case, now this comparing unit is outputting a 0 to this filter, and therefore it is rejecting the stacked shape, and that will mean that it will move down again, and it will become the left lane of this stacking module, okay? In the meantime, we get layer 5 together with piece 4. They are stacked here. They are output moving down and going to the third stacker module, and they are going to be stacked with the third piece, right? Because this is one of the full house types. So we get a triple stack on one side, a dual stack on the other, and then the result of that passes through this potential exit, but it may not take that exit. And because of the orientation, because of the way the filter is oriented, it should be receiving a 1, which it does, right? It should only receive a 0 if our shape type is a square type, which it isn't. Therefore, it gets a 1, and the shape is output to the next module. That's where this tri-stack meets this duo stack, and this will be the final stacker, where they meet each other, and we take this output of the rocket shape. Okay? So, and that is what happens. If we have, if we don't have a star, then this should be the output, and that is what's happening. Now let's look at the same principle again, but with the final shape. So I assume that when I put this through the machine, we will get a square encoding instead of a circle. Again, apologies for the confusion. Oh, come on. Again, professional at work here. Let's try it again. Copy and paste. There we go. There we go. So, yeah, as I suspected. Sorry. So now we get a square encoding, and let's have a look at the ramifications of that. In this case, we are going to stack 1, 2, and 3 together, and then separately we're going to stack 4 and 5, and then the combo of 1, 2, and 3. And the combo of 4 and 5, they are going to be stacked together. So let's see how that works in practice. Let's wait for the pieces to get assembled. There we go. They're ready now. So we get pieces 4 and 5. They get stacked. Okay, they get stacked here. And then here we get pieces 1 and 2. There we go. This one should not output, which it doesn't, so it redirects into the next stacking module. There it will meet up with piece 3, right? And in this case, we are getting a square, which is going to match up with this, and that is going to mean that the third piece should proceed straight ahead, in which case it will be redirected into this module. There it is going to meet the combination of 1 and 2. That will be stacked. And the combination of that, contrary to before, should not take the secondary output, right? So what happens here is we get another comparison with the square, and together with a NOT gate, that is going to redirect that shape onto the next module, and in the next module that meets up with the 4-5 combination. And then finally, oh wow, I'm getting tired of speaking, but I think we're almost there. So finally, that is output. Sorry about that. Just had a phone call, which I'm not going to take. So the output of that is connected to, again, to a comparison unit, and now I accidentally deleted it. Just a second. Again, professional at work, people. Accidentally clicked the right mouse button, which deletes the units, instead of the left mouse button, which selects the units. So as I was saying, we have our square signal. It matches up with this square signal in the comparing unit. It is negated, so we get a 0, and the 0 means that we're going to take this exit right here. And then what does this line do? I don't even remember what this line is good for. But yeah, anyway, that gives us our final output. So, my mouth is dry, actually. I feel like I talked for a long time, but then again, it is not as straightforward, you know? The pieces, finding out which pieces you need, that is a challenge in and of itself. But as I said, once you have the pieces and you know they're correct, and you have sorted them in an order that you also know to be correct, then still you aren't guaranteed a solution, right? So you still need to find the correct way to put those pieces together, because as we have demonstrated in this video, there is still more than one way to do that. And the way that works out in practice, you need to be able to identify that, which I did by encoding a shape signal, right? And that shape signal needs to be wired with your MAM, and the MAM needs to be able to cope with that. And I did it with, you know, filters and redirecting the shapes onto different lanes. But I hope you can see that it's not as straightforward, right? The ramifications of this are quite far, they reach quite far. So, we talked about a lot today. I hope you found it very interesting. This was a big chunk of information, right? Now that we have this information as baggage, you know, we did quite a big chunk, a quite important chunk, a quite fundamental piece of the operation of this TMAM. We have gone over that today. So I hope you found it very interesting. I may be inclined to say that we have even reached the peak of complexity of this shape of this video series, right in the half of our video series, video number 10. The next one will probably also be quite a heavyweight, and the one after that probably as well. But after that, it will be downhill, right? So I try to gradually, you know, increase the weight, increase the complexity of the topics I would discuss. But I think this video, together with the next couple of 2, maybe 3 videos, that will be the peak, and we will be going downhill after that. So thank you very much for sticking with me. As I said, I hope you found it interesting. I hope you had fun. I hope you are looking forward to part 11, which I will try to record and upload as soon as possible. Thanks again. Have a great day. I am checking out. Take care. Bye-bye.